everybody. I am Ellen, and this is Truth Teller Tales, and I am dedicated to interviewing the warriors who have the insight and the unwavering faith during this most incredible time in our history. And I believe their stories will be studied and remembered for generations to come. So I just think this is so important to do. Well, today I feel really lucky because I have a warrior and a patriot who is beautiful and wonderful. And I just can't wait to spend a little bit of time with her. So here she is, Melanie. Yay! How are
Hi.
you?
I'm so good, Ellen. I'm so happy to be here. And oh my gosh, your intro is awesome. That is so cool. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks to my daughter who went to the New York Film Academy. So it was nice to have a daughter that knows how to do all that stuff for
Absolutely.
sure.
That was really amazing. And yay, I'm
Ye
so happy to be here. I'm so happy to get to have this conversation with you. Your energy is like amazing and contagious. And so when you reached out to me, I was like, instant hell yes. Instant hell yes.
Well, I've been really looking forward to this because I've also admired you um, on various shows, and then you have your own podcast with your good friend Gina, and so I just want to get into all that. So first, tell me about that, kind of what you're up to on social media and what you're doing these days.
Yeah, it's like I've been a longtime member of our Anon community, but I have my own little twist and my own little contribution to it. And we're going to go into that, I'm sure, a little bit later.
Yeah.
But the project that I'm really excited to be working on, and we're only just about, gosh, what are we about into August now? So I'm only 8 months into it. Is my best friend of 25 years and her name is Gina, you just mentioned her. Back in January, we had this sort of divinely inspired moment of clarity of a way that she and I can contribute in a big way to humanity. She and I have both gone through these incredible life experiences where we experienced very, very heavy things, a lot of trauma. But in the midst of all of it, we've always been very, very focused on the healing journey itself and not just getting stuck in our pain and our traumas, but moving through it in a conscious, intentional way. And so throughout our lives, we've lived these sort of parallel journeys where her issues that she was dealing with maybe aren't the same as mine, but our emotional reactions and our experience of moving through them was always parallel. And we had these incredible, deep, meaningful conversations on the phone all the time, profound conversations where we felt like we were just downloading from source, downloading from God directly, and this incredible stuff would be coming through. And we're like, we should be recording these conversations. Like maybe
Yeah.
there's other people out there that would resonate with these conversations. And so after decades of this and not pulling the trigger, we finally decided in January that we would like start our own podcast. And so that's what we're doing. So we have a podcast. It's called The Why of It All: Healing Journeys and Inspiring Stories. So it's sort of following along with mine and Gina's healing journeys. We're very open, very raw, real, and authentic. And we'll just put it all out there for you because we've got nothing to hide. And we're hoping that our experiences, the things that we have learned, the tools that we have picked up along the way of this intentional healing journey will be useful for other people out there, or at the very least, allow people to know that they're not alone and have some feeling of connection and camaraderie and feel like there's somebody out there who truly understands what they're going through. So there's that. And then also, we occasionally bring in guests who are either going to be some sort of wellness provider. We've had grief counselors on. We've had naturopaths on. We've had different people who do energetic belief work. My mother was one of those. Or we
Oh,
bring in someone who has had an incredibly inspiring healing journey themselves and their story of how they overcame whatever physical trauma they went through or emotional trauma they went through or very, very difficult life experience, and then came out the other side and are using what they went through to give back to humanity in a meaningful way. We bring people like that on as well to tell their story, and that way we all rise together. So that's what our show
don't
is about. Yeah.
And don't you think that I mean, just listening to that, I feel that everything is on God's timing. And don't you think that having your channel start already now as we move into closure and different things that people who aren't really understanding what's happening are going to have to understand what's happening and are gonna need the things that you're doing in healing. I mean, the timing to me sounds perfect.
Ellen, you just absolutely freaking nailed it. You know, I've been part of this Anon community for a long time. I'm a lurker. I'm not someone who does much in chat because
Me
I
either.
can't chat
I
and
can't
take
either.
in the content and process at the same time. So I'm a bit of a lurker. But I've been around for a long time. I've met a lot of people through the in-person events and things like that. And for years, I had this burning feeling like I need to be contributing to this incredible truth community in a meaningful way. But
Yeah.
like, I'm not the digger.
Yeah,
I don't need to be the digger. There are so many phenomenal diggers out there doing great
right.
work. I feel like my role in that department is to amplify the voices of these
Yes,
incredible talented diggers and to be a support system. And so I kept asking myself like, man, what is my contribution? Because it's not
right.
digging. It's not necessarily like going back and forth in regards to the actuals. I'm much more of like I'm not even a 40,000 foot view person. I'm like an 80,000 foot view person. So, you know, on the shows that I get invited to be a guest on, that's sort of, I kind of do the very zoomed out Melanie, world according to Melanie takes. But I knew I had to contribute in some way. And my
Yeah,
whole life experience, that I guess we'll get into here in a little bit, has paved the way for me to be a healer. Every single experience I had in my life drove me in that direction. I was literally a licensed healing professional for many, many years. And so now that I have really I'm coming out on the other side of a really intense physical healing journey that started seeing massive improvements back in January, right around the time when Gina and I started our podcast. And it was like God just opened the doors to opportunity. And I started getting phone calls from some of our mutual friends inviting me to come on their shows. And on these shows, somehow, the conversation would always go in the direction of the things that happen to be my wheelhouse, the trauma healing, physical healing, neurophysiology, things like that, alternative medicine. And then I have other things that are passion projects of mine, alternative education and parenting during the Great Awakening and things like that. And I somehow just get like invited to shows where the conversation allowed me to talk about the things that are my wheelhouse. And here I am finding myself contributing to our beloved truth community in a meaningful way that I think I just had to be ready to use my voice. And that's been part of my healing journey, is finding the courage to use my voice and be seen. And here I am. It's like,
amen.
what is happening right now?
That all makes such sense, but that is that everything, and that's why I wanna tell your story, and that's why I think all of your stories are so important because your lives are leading up to this, and it's all in God's timing, and when you do look around and be like, you know, because it then starts to really make sense, the timing of everything, you know?
Absolutely. You know, and
So
I strongly feel as though talking about the timing specifically, I think that Trump coming back into office for this term marks the beginning of the healing phase. Yes, we're still neck deep in D class, and there's still a lot of information coming out, and we're not done yet. You know, we're all still waiting with bated breath for the justice phase to begin.
right,
But I think that simultaneously, what's happening is we are on a macro humanity collective consciousness level moving into the beginnings of the healing phase. And I have noticed from my personal experience that healing process beginning on a micro personal level as well, within myself, within people that I know, family, friends, almost everybody I talk to, is beginning the process of going inward, looking inward. So we have macro level healing and micro level healing happening simultaneously. And then the doors of possibility open up to a person like me who has been asking for, how do I give back? The timing.
It is timing. Isn't it amazing how when you said the macro and the micro, it all mirrors each other,
Mhm.
right? And then we were in that during the pandemic, we were all so separated, and there was healing hadn't even begun. It was this traumatic thing for everybody. And so now we're on this wave of healing, individually, to your point, and
Yeah.
then in the global area. And I do think that those lighthouses like you around the world are lifting the vibration of everybody, and whether people know it or not. And you know those healing moments that you have had personally, which I can't wait to get into, happens intentionally at those certain times, and everything is so intentional, and it's so simple yet so complex that it can only be a God story, you
Yes.
know? And that's why I love hearing these stories, because every one of them makes sense to me, when we're writing our stories, and it's just brilliant in every way.
Very well
So
said.
with that, I can't wait to dive into your life. So I would love to start just at the beginning, kind of where you were born, and about your family life and how everything kind of got started for you.
Yeah. I am from Central Texas, born and raised Austinite, back when Austin was cool before it got gross. I'm still in the Central Texas area outside of Austin. All of
Okay.
my family is here. I was very, very blessed to have been born into the most extraordinary family. We are very, very close, always have been. I was born knowing unconditional love from the very first moment. And that's
Wow.
something that I have recently, I mean, I've always known that, of course, that I've always been grateful for it, but recently having conversations with so many different people where that has been the thing that they've been chasing their whole life.
Yeah.
And God, what a freaking gift
Yeah.
I have, that I was born into unconditional love. I've known it my whole life, and that's never been the issue for me. Somehow, though, despite having this incredibly loving, wonderful, supportive family, I was incredibly insecure as a child, incredibly
Wow.
pathologically, uh, just desperately insecure. And it manifested mostly in regards to my peers. And I really can't put my finger on why. It really doesn't make a lot of sense, except for that I believe that we come into this life experience with a purpose and
Mhm.
with old, I'll call it wounds within ourselves and things that we are meant to grow into. Um, it's my belief that we prearrange this stuff before we come in. It's sort of a divinely, it's a divine purpose to come in and overcome certain self-imposed limitations. And through that
Mhm.
growth process, as we grow into the greatest versions of ourselves, we have then the opportunity to give back to humanity what we've learned. So I started out incredibly insecure despite this wonderful, loving, supportive family, misinterpreting some experiences with peers as a child, and believing then that I was rejected and I was judged, and I was internalizing all of that into Melanie is the worst, Melanie is terrible, Melanie is rejectable and judgeable, and just turned it all into the lifetime self-flagellation,
Mhm.
and developed health problems as a result. You can only hate
Oh,
yourself for so long before your body starts responding and shutting down. So developed a lot of health problems as a child, as a teenager. And in my early
wow.
20s, after graduating from high school, I was in such a state of ill health, and I had seen all these different healthcare providers, all of the allopathic, I exhausted every allopathic and conventional medicine option for some chronic health problems that I had. And out of a desperate, nowhere else to turn and no idea what else to do choice, I went to the local acupuncture school in Austin. It was called AOMA. It was considered one of the best acupuncture schools in the country at the time, and tried the free acupuncture clinic treatment. And these are students. This is a student clinic, and that's why it's free. But I was desperate, and I was a poor college kid who didn't have any money. So I'm like, I'm just going to try this. It cured me overnight. I woke up the next
What?
morning after having one treatment, one acupuncture treatment, and I woke up the next morning, my chronic problem was gone, never came back. And at the time, I thought that I was going to be a dental assistant. I was actually working on getting into dental hygiene school. I immediately stopped what I was doing. I shifted gears completely and applied to acupuncture school the following week, got in, and started a 4-year master's program in traditional Chinese medicine.
Oh,
And so
wow.
through that 4 years, this was after 4 years of pre-med, by the way. I'm kind of mishing the timeline together a little bit. You'll learn about me. Timelines are not my greatest talent and ability. It all sort of blends together. But
Before you
I
go there, before you go
yeah,
there, I just find this so fascinating. So, you had this insecurity as a child and you can't pinpoint it, but did you have siblings that seemed confident that you were in the shadow of? Was that have anything to do with it? And
probably.
when did I mean, tell me about that.
I have a younger sister who came out knowing that she was the most popular kid at the party and literally was her whole life. She was
Yes.
the younger sister. Um, I don't think that she was the cause of anything. Me and my sister have basically been best friends our whole life, with the exception of like a
Mhm.
couple of years when I was like 18 and she was 16 and we hated each other's guts, but that's like hormones, right?
Yeah,
Prior to
that's
that and
normal.
everything after that, she's one of my best friends. Um,
Yeah.
but it certainly did reflect back to me my own insecurity, right? So it's like I'm
Mhm.
insecure, and then I'm seeing that this other person who's grown up, who has basically the same life as me, has the
Right.
completely opposite reaction.
Yeah.
And how is it that she, like literally, Ellen, when she was in elementary school, there was like a blackboard list of who gets to sit next to Rochelle at lunchtime because otherwise her classmates would fight over it. So like, I had that reflection, right? And it just highlighted
Wow.
all my own shit back to me. So anyway, so I
Yeah.
was dealing with the emotional heaviness of all of that. And
Yeah, and
then,
and so let me ask you this too,
yeah,
because with that, and then when was it during the middle school or whatever period did that the insecurities get worse? And then the physical things that happened to you that all just snowball basically with all of that.
there was traumas involved as well. Something that I have talked about on my show, so I don't have any problem talking about it here too, is a sexual assault when I was 16.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that added to all of it, so there was
Yeah.
literally, I was so in such judgment and insecurity on myself that the intensity of my own insecurity was a trauma in and of itself. Then there was
Yeah.
the sexual assault when I was 16. And I took that sexual assault and twisted it back on myself as a flaw of mine because I let my guard down. I let my guard down and allowed myself to be taken advantage of in that way. And that was a double trauma because what it did is it
Yeah.
put me in a state of such intense nervous system dysregulation that started at that, well, probably started when I was a kid with all of the self flagellation, but it amplified because of my reaction to that experience. And in hindsight now, I just turned 44. And I didn't learn about my own nervous system dysregulation until literally January. I
Wow.
always thought because and this is honestly my suspicion is that many of us who end up in the truth community
Mhm.
end up here because of being in a state of hypervigilance. We've all been through something intense. Some people will have a trauma response that shuts them down. Some people have a
Mhm.
trauma response of withdrawal and avoidance. But other people, myself included, and a lot of our mutual friends, respond by going into a state of hypervigilance. Well, in hypervigilance, your pattern recognition skills shoot through the roof. Your ability to notice discrepancies between words and intention and action and energy shoots through the roof. I have always been able to literally smell deception. I can tell when someone's vibration does not match the words coming out of their mouth. I'm a human lie detector. And I've
Excellent.
been that way my whole life, but it came out of trauma, of
Yeah.
this nervous system reaction during a time in my life where I wasn't aware of my own behavior. I wasn't aware of what I was experiencing was a nervous system fight or flight response.
You're right.
It was the best I could do to protect myself during that time where I didn't know any better. And that's something we all need to remember about our trauma responses as well, is that when is people have a tendency to go into judgment of themselves, but it's like we're all doing the best we can with the information and tools that we have at the time. It's in
Right.
hindsight that we can heal and grow and begin the process of self-reflecting and healing and recognizing that we don't have to do that anymore. So
Yeah.
that experience set the stage for this nervous system dysregulation in which I didn't want to get caught with my pants down ever again. And so I was in a state of hypervigilance, hyperfocus, nervous system, constant fight or flight mode for the
Yeah.
next 20 something years of my life. And I never even knew that I had what is essentially anxiety. I never even knew I had it because I was so high functioning the whole
Oh,
time.
wow.
Like, I was such a badass in acupuncture school. We're talking learning thousands of tiny micro data points over those 4 years, rote memorization of all of it, working full time, going to school at night. I mean, it was just, I was burning the candle at both ends and I freaking nailed it. I was very high up in terms of my graduating position in class. I had phenomenal clinical success rates. Um, I got out, I graduated, I started my own practice, phenomenal success rates in clinic.
Wait, so
I
I wanna
practiced,
wait, back up, because that's so
sure.
interesting. That's so interesting to me, everything you just said. So at first, though, you said you just touched on it, you went to regular medical school? Is that what?
No, not Chinese medicine school. So pre-med, the undergraduate portion of what you have to accomplish before you can go into traditional Chinese medicine graduate school
Okay, got it.
is basically the same pre-med undergrad that doctors do. It's 4 year pre-med,
Okay,
right?
okay.
From there, shifting over to graduate school with traditional Chinese medicine, which much of it does mirror medical school, right? It's like, we're in the modern age, you have to learn about all of that stuff as well.
Right.
Traditional Chinese medicine includes acupuncture, Chinese herbology, and Asian bodywork. All those three things kind of fit under that umbrella. So when somebody is a licensed acupuncturist, you see LAC after their name,
Okay,
they
okay.
are they have generally speaking either a master's or doctorate level graduate degree in traditional Chinese medicine, which fits all those three different sort of categories.
Wow, Melanie, I'm so impressed. That's really wild. So you dove into that, and so what's interesting, because you're so smart, so you dove into that head first, and I've heard, as I'm doing these other stories where the different people are high achievers. You're obviously a high achiever, and you were top of your class, learned it all, did great, but you kept yourself so busy too, it sounds
Yeah.
like, is that you didn't really weren't able to do that inner reflection that you said you did years later, right?
Girl, I need to get a t-shirt that says Healer, Heal Thyself. I was the poster child for Healer, Heal Thyself. And when I graduated, one of the reasons why I had such high clinical success rates is that whereas most acupuncturists go into practice and they pretty much stay within that traditional Chinese medicine bubble using herbs, bodywork, and acupuncture, I learned very quickly that it didn't matter how many needles I stuck people with. It didn't matter how many herbs I made them choke down. It didn't matter how much, Tui Na and Shiatsu I did. If they were nutritionally bankrupt, because our food is garbage now, we grow our
Right.
crops in nutritionally bankrupt soils without the proper minerals, Obviously all of the treatments and pesticides and things that are applied to the crops afterwards. The food does not
Right.
contain the same nourishment that it used to, even if someone's eating a pristine diet, and most people aren't eating a pristine diet. So I
Yeah.
learned really, really quickly in practice that in order to achieve the results that I wanted, I needed to make sure that my patients were nourished. So my postgraduate studies shifted almost entirely to functional nutrition. So I was doing
Mm.
acupuncture, functional nutrition, and then also energetic body work because healer. And that stuff comes through me. My success rates were off the charts. But yes, Ellen, it was all focused outward. It was outward, outward, outward. And even though I was practicing what I preached in terms of, for me, maintaining the healthiest lifestyle I could, that healthy lifestyle, exercise, diet, nutrition, removing toxins from my environment to the greatest degree that I possibly could, all of that was good, but I hadn't gone inward into the emotional wounds and the traumas of my past. And so over the course of the next decade and a half, decade, let's get to a decade from that point.
Mhm.
Mid 30s or so. At that point, I was doing great in terms of my life. I had this beautiful, successful practice. I had
Mhm.
met the man of my dreams, and
Mhm.
we had gotten married. And um, I felt like I had a really, really good life, but all of that stuff had just been crammed really, really deep. Now, I was doing energy work, I was doing inner work, but I was sort of, in hindsight, realizing that I was doing a bit of spiritual bypassing around the real truth of the traumas of my past. And then again, forgive me if this if this timeline sounds completely convoluted because it's really hard for me to track it at this point because of the decades of nervous system dysregulation. It causes problems in your short-term memory centers and turning
Interesting.
short-term memory into long-term memory. So that gets a little fuzzy. But shortly after I got married, um, which was in 2013, is that right? Yes, married in 2013. Um, we were ready to have our first child. And 34 weeks into that pregnancy, that we lost that child. And we had found out at 20 weeks, at the 20-week anatomical ultrasound, that there was a problem with the pregnancy. And we
Oh,
spent the
Melanie.
next 14 weeks traveling all over the state, visiting with the best perinatologists available, and being told again and again and again, there's nothing we can do. And so I was just, my first reaction was total confusion. Like, how is it possible? Me being as healthy as I am, taking as good a care of myself as I do, having this, wonderful life that I live. This can't be real. I didn't just lose a child. That's not possible. And it kicked off an experience where my husband and I had two choices. We knew, because we'd seen other people in our lives go through it, we knew that we had to address this trauma head on. We could not just let ourselves passively move through it, or it was going to stick to us and destroy our lives, destroy our marriage. So the two of us both intentionally moved through the healing process, using lots of tools and resources, seeking out the assistance of people who help with this sort of thing. And Ellen, 4 months after losing an almost full-term child, my husband and I actually felt healed to enough of a degree that we agreed that we were ready to try again. And when I say healed, I'm talking we weren't bawling our eyes out every day anymore. We were very intentional with the way that we moved through it. What would happen is we would allow the feelings to come up. We wouldn't bottle them at all, allow them to process. Think of it like releasing a valve off the top. We would
Mhm.
allow the grief to come and allow the valve to pour until we felt it start to subside. As in, like, that moment where you're crying about something and then you feel like the tears are starting to dry up and you're starting to calm down a
Yeah.
little bit. When we hit that point, we would go, okay, we're done now. And then move on with our lives. And we did this again and again and again and again. And shockingly, 4 months afterwards, we were actually doing really good, genuinely within. and tried for the next one. And long story short on that department is I have a beautiful, healthy daughter. She just turned 10, which is
Oh,
crazy to me. Um, and so that was that portion of her life. Now, the 10 years after my daughter was born, I started to develop, shortly after she was born, I started to develop a chronic pain condition. And at the time, I didn't make the connection between the loss of that first child and the timing of when this chronic pain kicked in. Now, I knew that doing two back-to-back pregnancies, one of them having been a trauma pregnancy, that
yeah.
my thyroid was trashed after that. Um, and so I just kind of thought maybe it was that, but the pain just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. I saw a bazillion different natural healthcare providers, functional medicine doctors, naturopaths. I mean, I had all the tests run, everything was fine. They're like, you're the most healthy person we've ever seen.
Mm.
Nobody directed me to focus and look at the state of my nervous system until just a very short time ago. It was just like less than a couple of years ago that somebody finally pointed out that I was in a state of nervous system dysregulation. And even then, one of the best functional medicine doctors in the country still diagnosed me with Lyme disease and focused the treatment on Lyme disease. Well, 2 years of Lyme disease treatment got me absolutely freaking nowhere. If it was the Lyme disease, the treatment would have helped, but it didn't. Now, he even noticed that I had nervous system dysregulation, which is basically being trapped in fight or flight mode all the time. But again, I didn't have anxiety. I wasn't feeling emotionally anything. I love my life. It was a nervous system state of fight or flight mode. It was everything in my body doing this all the time. I had so much tension and rigidity in my body at all time, plus the hypervigilance. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
watching my back all the time,
Right.
concealed carrying everywhere I go. Like I didn't feel like I was in fear because I was like, I've got it handled. Nothing gets past me. So I wasn't walking around feeling afraid and anxious, but my body was in that state.
Yeah.
And so,
Wow.
to make a long story short, I started finally, divine appointment showed up in my life back in this very past December, January, and brought a woman into my life whose specialty is nervous system dysregulation and limbic impairment. And she introduced me to a strategy to go inward and specifically address the nervous system itself and begin the process of rewiring my brain out of perpetual fight or flight state, teaching my brain how to leave those well-worn neural pathways of everything, of needing to be in a state of self-defense all the time, and shifting creating new neural pathways of safety, well-being, and security. And it requires work every single day to do that neural rewiring process. But Ellen, within 2 weeks of beginning these exercises, I felt better than I'd felt in a decade. And it was about that time that Gina and I started the podcast. It was about that time that I started getting the invitations to go on other people's shows. It was like the divine timing of it was just the most marvelous thing. And I couldn't have planned it if I wanted to. But here I am now. I'm 8 months in to this dedicated process of rewiring my nervous system. It's healing is not linear, so there's been some up and
Yeah.
down moments. I
Right.
learned, for anybody who follows me on social media, you will know that I was recently volunteering for the Texas flood disaster relief effort, helping to coordinate volunteer teams and getting them deployed out to properties. I was doing that for 2 weeks and absolutely overdid it and deprioritized my own well-being to such an intense degree recently that I got a nice reminder from my body health that is not okay.
Yeah.
If we don't
And
take
I
care
want
of ourselves, we're no use to anybody else. So it's
first.
not a linear process, but I
No.
feel better and I have more to be grateful for than I think I ever have in my entire life. And it's part of this timing thing. And I feel like I'm
Yeah.
finally in a healer, heal thyself success story. And here I am sharing that with others.
I just, it's your story is incredible, and it made me a little teary just a couple
Oh,
places because as a mother myself, no one understands that loss
mhm,
unless you've been through something like that. And the different things throughout your life, obviously, that you dealt with, but then kept yourself busy and highly intellectual and just all those different things. It's amazing how our body is what finally makes us pay attention, isn't
yeah.
it? We can hide it in our mind because our minds are we can fool ourselves and things like that and fool ourselves into thinking, I'm fine. I know this. This is my wheelhouse." But then the body tells you no, you know? And it's
Hmm.
fascinating to hear your story. And do you think that, because you said it took you a while, on this last journey with the chronic illness, it took you a while to find the right person. And you thought first it was the Lyme disease, they were told that. Do you think there was a reason why you had to go that journey too in order to get where you are? Tell me about that.
100%. I think that most of us who have an inner drive to be of service to humanity in some way or another, and every one of us on here on a screen is doing that in our own way.
Yeah.
We have to have the reference points to be able to speak to other people's experiences. Without the reference points, you know,
Yeah,
we're just kind of talking out our ass. I had to go
right.
through what I went through. And I look at it now in hindsight, of course, in it sucked pretty bad. Uh, but in hindsight, now I look back and I can see very, very clearly how every single thing that I experienced, from the insecurity as a child to the sexual assault to the deprioritization of my own well-being and all of my energy going out to patients for all of the years that I was in practice, to the loss of a child and the last 10 years of chronic pain with failed diagnosis after failed diagnosis after failed diagnosis after failed treatment, all of the frustration and disappointment and all of that. I can see now how it has given me the most incredible reference points that I can use to help other people who are in their own frustrating healing journey. It's
Mhm.
given me a level of compassion
Yes.
and empathy that you
Yeah.
don't get to unless you earned it.
Yes.
Um, and it's helped me understand that, what you spoke to a minute ago was about how, the body will let you know, right? The body will let you know when you can't get away with something anymore. What's interesting is, first of all, I agree very much with what you just said, but there's also a flip side to it. I spent those
Okay.
10 years working with all of those functional medicine doctors and naturopaths and chiropractors and
Oh,
massage
yeah.
therapists and myofascial release people and acupuncturists and herbalists. I mean, I did it all. All of the treating of the body as a meat suit got me
Yes.
nowhere. Got me
I hear that. Yeah.
nowhere. It wasn't until I was willing to go inward and address the emotional wounds of the past and the beliefs that I had in place about those emotional wounds. It wasn't until I started healing those that I started to get relief. And yes, doing the neural brain rewiring aspect, you could argue, is working on the meat suit. But and along with that, I had to let go of the belief, for example, that I am broken. I had to
Yeah.
let go of the belief that it is a literal threat to my safety if I am judged, if I am rejected, if I am
Right.
thought of as less than. I literally, as far as my nervous system was concerned, is if someone judged me, I was going to die. It was a
Yeah.
threat to my physical well being if someone judged me. So I walked through my entire life as a people pleaser, deprioritizing myself, not making choices from choice and desire, but making choices from fear. And I had to heal all of that. And this whole process of 20 something years of doing inner work, starting with tools that helped me move through the surface level insecurities, but eventually evolving into what I've been doing recently that's created the most profound experiences. Going on these shows, finding the courage to put myself out there and use my voice and be
Yes.
seen and be like, you know what? I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I talk a lot
Yeah.
about frequency. I talk a lot about inner work. I get really vulnerable and tell people my story, and not everybody's going to jive with that. And I'm finally, for the first time in my life, like learning to be okay with that. Um, how this all sort of weaves in to the truth
Yes.
community and the Anon community as well is along the journey at some point, um, beginning to see the truth in the deception in our the world around us, right? Like it
Mhm.
started out with recognizing the deceptions and the corruption in big pharma and big medicine.
Right.
I had the reference points there for alternative medicine, and I could see, for example, I'll give you an example. Like I specialize in digestive disorders, so patients coming in who had been treated for acid reflux, for example, for many, many, many years with big pharma and modern medicine, allopathic medicine techniques, and had no relief. Their bodies were deteriorating. And from me understanding that giving someone proton pump inhibitors and acid blockers is the literally exact opposite of what should be done. These people don't have excessive stomach acid, they have deficient stomach acid. We shouldn't be blocking
Wow.
stomach acid production, we should be supplementing it. And then having patients whose literal lives turned around within a week of a simple treatment with a bottle of natural supplement that costs $20 for like an entire month's worth, right? It was little things like that, seeing how the modern medical system is mistreating people so badly
Big
and it's
things.
focused on sick care, not health care. And then
Yes.
through that process, learning about vaccines and how they're not
Okay.
liable for vaccine injury, learning about problems within, for example, the birthing industry. After having a traumatic birth in a hospital for that first birth, where I lost the first child, I decided for the second birth, I wanted to do the exact opposite of that. So I had a home
Yeah.
birth. And it was one of the
Wow.
most profoundly amazing experiences of my life. And like how many people use those words to describe childbirth, right? Not
Yes.
very many.
Very little.
But
No.
it can be that, and I think that's what God intended, is for childbirth, painful though as it is, to be something different than what modern medicine has turned it into. And so I was learning
Agreed.
about all of the um, all of the issues in the medical system are what sort of, that was basically my red pill. I can use the word red pill
Yeah.
in this community. Everybody knows what that is. So that
Right.
was my red pill moment. And then it was, discovering Q and devolution theory and all of that and everything 2019-ish, moving forward from
Wow.
there. Finding various channels and anons and following along in the truth
Yes.
community from there.
So before you go there, I just have to bring back, because everyone has their leaping off period. So obviously, because
Mhm.
of your history and your education, that knowledge of and the way in the medical field that you went of acupuncture in that line, you could see the deception of or the misinformation,
Mhm.
that was happening in the medical industry. But what's cool, I just as you were talking, this came into my head because we were talking about physical, mental, and to your point, because it was so good, is that, yes, we have physical symptoms, and you were treating them just as the physical symptom without the mental aspect to it, right?
Mhm.
That's a whole can of worms
Yeah.
that is not even touched on in our society. When people have physical ailments, they go in and their meat suit, to your point, gets treated. And you're now understanding through all that you've been through that that's just a piece of the puzzle. And don't
Yeah.
you think that what you're saying and what you're doing is going to be so important in a bigger picture as we learn how to heal ourselves in mentally and physically?
Absolutely. And world according to Melanie, there's a right way and there's a wrong way to do it. If you're just sitting in front of a therapist talking about your problems all the time, all you're doing is neurologically reinforcing the neural pathways of your problems. And your
Yeah.
brain, see, the thing about the brain is designed to keep us safe, and comfort and familiarity from a brain standpoint are uh, better choices and better and provide more safety than unfamiliar change. So your brain is always going to default to doing the same pattern again and again and again and again and again. It takes effort to shift your brain out of that fight or flight, talking about my problem zone, reinforcing the problem zone. It takes a lot of effort to retrain it to look at solutions and to look at other states of being and these sort of shifting your mental perspective. So from my
Right.
perspective, if you're just sitting around talking about your problems and you're just thinking about your problems and you're just reinforcing your problems, you stay stuck in your problems. It takes a literal, basically, the simplest way to describe it is gratitude. If you can
Yeah.
get from whatever uncomfortable mental and emotional train of thought that you're on and shift yourself over to gratitude, that that is a powerful, powerful state. You can literally retrain your brain stuck in a state of pumping out norepinephrine, cortisol, and adrenaline all the time, which anyone who's in a state of nervous system dysregulation and fight or flight mode, norepinephrine, cortisol, adrenaline are flowing through your bloodstream nonstop. And the problem with that is you cannot physically shift into rest and heal mode with those three compounds in your bloodstream. You have to somehow trigger your brain to shift into the production of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin in order to allow the nervous system to relax and heal. So, how do you get those going when you're in fight or flight mode? Well, it takes some
Right.
work. It takes focusing on gratitude. It takes mental exercises, like, for example, visualizing a joyful memory from your past. Your brain doesn't know the difference between present moment and past, by the way. It has no, your brain, they hook people up to EKGs, and your neural activity thinking about an experience from the past and thinking about a similar experience from the present is identical. Your brain doesn't know the difference. So all it takes, you can literally put yourself in an exercise for 20 minutes where you are imagining a joyful experience from your past and really engage your brain in it. Really smell the smells, feel the feelings, hear the conversations or the experiences. Or for my favorite thing, for example, I grew up with horses. So
Mm.
my joyful memory from the past when I'm doing these exercises is I imagine walking out to the barn and I imagine the sounds of my boots on the heavy wooden ramp as I go
Oh,
up the ramp into the barn. I imagine the sound of the big metal door creaking as it opens. I imagine the smells from walking into the barn of the grain and the hay and the leather and the
I love
fly
that.
spray. And then I imagine, you know what I'm saying? You use all of your
Yeah.
senses to really engage yourself in this joyful memory. And in doing so, you force your brain to release dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. And in those moments, your brain shifts out of fight or flight and into rest and heal. And you do it again and 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 again. And your brain learns to abandon the old neural pathways of fight or flight and forge the new pathways of calm and healing and joy and gratitude and a calm state of being. But it takes work.
Wow.
It takes work.
Yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
thank God for you. I mean, the medical industry has a lot to relearn, you
They
know?
really do.
I mean,
They really do.
it's a whole, and I it's just there's gonna be a lot of relearning to do.
Yeah.
And thank goodness that there are people like you to help with that understanding of this. And something you said, because I always like to, one of the last questions be this, because the word that you talked about is gratitude. And I feel like people that have been on this journey who, like you started to see the deception in one area, which led you to the other areas because you were able to be that person that saw the patterns and the puzzles and the things like that.
Yeah.
Where in that path did your spirituality grow? Was it one thing or was it a gradual type of thing for you?
You know, that's something that's evolved for me throughout my whole life. and something I've leaned on more heavily in different points of my life.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of spiritual, can you clarify exactly what you're asking? Because there's different ways that people look at that.
Well, not necessarily having a specific religion or
Mhm.
but having that authentic connection with God and knowing that there is
Okay.
something so much bigger and greater in
Yeah.
our world.
Yeah. I'm not a particularly religious person. I was born Jewish, raised Baptist,
What?
and then sort of in my 20s and 30s kind of non-denominational Christian through most of that. And then for me, the dogma within organized religion became a problem. And I
Yeah.
learned over time that I didn't need any of it anyway because I had my own relationship with God. Um, through the different types of energy work that I have studied and used throughout my life, many, many different modalities. Some of it formally trained, some of it learned through, various workshops and things that I traveled around the country learning. Um, I have developed what for me feels like the ability to connect directly with God and talk anytime. I
Yes.
can receive insights very, very clearly when I ask a question um, or I make a request or I'm asking for clarity on something. It comes in almost like words. I can hear it in my head. Um,
Yeah.
and the reason that I know that that is God is because I know unconditional love. And to me, God is the vibration of unconditional love. And I
Yeah.
recognize it very, very clearly because I grew up with it.
Yes.
Um,
OMG. And doesn't that in it itself give you that sense of gratitude?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in those moments being connected to that to source, to divine source and divine truth, it
Right.
allows me also to see all the things that I have to be grateful for and to recognize all of
Yes.
that. You
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
There's something I want to add here because I think it's something that those of us in the truth community who have been through these various traumas, right, that have conditioned us in ways and we've developed certain trauma responses that have made us really good at being the truthers that we are
Mhm.
is what if we could all of us get to the point, and this is going to sound a little bit weird if you've never considered this, but what if we could all get to the point where we had gratitude for our past negative experiences because of the reference points they gave us and because of the superpowers in discernment and truth finding that we developed as a trauma response. What if
Yeah.
we could look back now and have gratitude for those experiences and the trauma responses? And from this new place where we are, from our new higher vantage point, working on
Yes.
ourselves, doing the inner work, growing, evolving, and healing, what if we can let go of the trauma, but we get to keep the superpowers? Like,
I
I
love it.
don't I don't have to be hyper vigilant anymore. I don't need to because I am self-sourcing and inner sourcing my own security. I'm not
Yeah.
this inner insecure, fearful child anymore. I've grown beyond that. And I still have little it bubbles up every now and then in certain things, but every time it bubbles back up, I am so grateful for the opportunity to spot that little wound that still exists that I have now the opportunity to heal.
Yes.
What if we could all do that and we could recognize that we don't have to hold on to the trauma anymore. We can let that go and we still get to keep the skills and the talents and the abilities.
Agreed. I love that. And to your point, and you said looking at it from like a 40,000-foot view, you're not absorbing it anymore. You're understanding it and understanding your story and the path
Yeah.
that it took to get you right to where you are and to understand it and to your point, appreciate it and have gratitude for it to get us where we are today. And that is such a wonderful message, to leave with. And I hope more people find you and go to your podcast, the why of it all, because I just love hearing your story and what you have been through and how you have come out on the other end, and you're just so charming and beautiful, and I admire you very much. And so I just appreciate you, and I thank you so much for sharing this incredible message and story with me and with everybody here today, Melanie. It just means the world to me.
It's been my absolute honor and pleasure, Ellen. And like I said, I just absolutely adore your energy. I When you reached out to me, I was like, good. You are
Yay! Well, I
finding your role in all of this, and you're doing it so beautifully and so well. And I'm so glad you're doing it because you're right. These stories need to be told. People are going to want
yes,
to know in the future, and you documenting it like the way
yeah.
that you're doing is just it's such an incredible thing. It's going to be an incredible resource in the future, and it's an incredible resource now. It's beautiful,
Thank
and
you.
I'm
It's
so glad to see you doing what you're doing.
Thank you. It's so cool how we kind of all find our thing, right? For in
Yeah,
this period of time. So I appreciate you, and I'm happy to call you a new friend.
of course.
And thank you again, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon, and take care of yourself, okay?
I will. Thank you so
All right.
much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.